Hello humans, welcome back to Your Thoughts Are Valid and I hope you all are doing great. So today we are going to continue with unit third, which are the stress, lifestyle disorders and its management. So this is part 12 of health psychology crash course. So let's see what we are going to learn today. So today we are going to learn about psychoneuroimmunology and also about immune system, humoral and cell-mediated immunity. So let's start with the video. Psychoneuroimmunology is the study of the interaction among behavioral, neural, endocrine, and immune processes. Okay, behavioral, neural, and endocrine and immune processes. Okay, Psychoimmunology refers Psychoneuroimmunology refers most simply to the study of interactions among behavioral, neural, and endocrine or neuroendocrine and immunologic processes of adaptation. Its central premise is that homeostasis is an integrated process involving interactions among behavior and the nervous, endocrine, and immune systems. So, this field of psychoneuroimmunology grew from the work of Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov and his classical conditioning model. With psychoneuroimmunology, Russian researchers conducted series of experiments that showed the body's other systems may be altered by conditioning as well. American researchers like Eder took the research further in US, and we now know for certain that immune responses can be enhanced or suppressed with a wide variety of conditioned cues. We also have a deeper understanding of the placebo effect. Some researchers are beginning to believe that it might be a conditioned response as well. As psychoneuroimmunology gained greater acceptance in scientific community, finding that emotional states can affect immunity has been an important one, and research in this area helps us to gain a clearer understanding of stress and its effects on health. We are gaining a clearer understanding of the links between lifestyle and personality factors and immunity as research continues. Moving on. So I hope psychoneuroimmunology is clear to you. So you have to remember three terms that it is basically the study of behavioral, neural, and endocrine, or we can say neuroendocrine system, okay, and immune processes. So I hope this is clear. Moving on. Connection between your brain and your immune system. Your body's first defense against illness or injury is called the sickness response because it's what makes you feel sick. It's what gives you a fever, reduces your appetite, and makes you feel anxious. It also releases a stress hormone cortisol. Sickness response is your body's attempt to save energy for fighting an infection. When your immune cells arrive on the scene of an infection, they release cytokines. We will study what cytokines are. Your vagus nerve, which runs from your abdomen to your head, had receptors for parts of these cytokines. When these receptors are activated, they send a signal to your brain to make its own cytokines. This causes your brain to send a response back to your immune system, which further activates your immune response. So, a cytokine is basically a small protein that's released by cells, especially those in your immune system. The cells in your immune system release a protein, a very small protein called cytokine. There are many types of cytokines, but the ones that are generally stimulated by stress are called pro-inflammatory cytokines. So let's look at the previous point again. Okay, this one, that when your immune cells arrive on the scene of an infection, they release cytokines. Okay, your vagus nerve, which runs from your abdomen to your head, okay, vagus nerve which run from your abdomen to your head has receptors for parts of these cytokines, and when these receptors are activated, they send a signal to your brain to make its own cytokines. And this causes your brain to send a response back to your immune system, which further activates your immune response. If you are unable to understand this part, don't worry, because we are going to understand this in detail in the later slides. So don't worry. For now, just try to understand if you can. This is just like a very brief summary of what we are going to study in the next few slides. Then this connection between your brain and your immune system run both ways. It doesn't work without the vagus nerve. If your brain doesn't get the message from the vagus nerve, it won't trigger the sickness response. The reverse is true as well. In early studies where cytokines were placed in the brains of animals, sickness response was triggered even when there was no infection. That's why we said that like we can condition the immune system. Then, under normal circumstances, your body releases pro-inflammatory cytokines in response to an infection or injury to help destroy germs or repair tissue. When you are physically or emotionally stressed, your body also releases certain hormones called epinephrine or adrenaline. These hormones can bind to specific receptors that signal for the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. Okay, this is we are talking about normal circumstances here. So your our body basically releases pro-inflammatory cytokines in response to an infection or an injury, so that germs can be destroyed or the tissue can be repaired. And when we are emotionally or physically stressed, our body release certain hormones like epinephrine or adrenaline, and these hormones bind to specific receptors that signal for the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So I hope it is clear till here, and if it is not, don't worry, we are going to cover this part in detail in the next few slides. Then let's move on. How stress can make you sick. Stress can cause your body to have the same sickness response as infection or illness. The only difference is that it originates in the brain instead of being triggered by your immune system, by your immune cells. Your brain produces cytokines in response to stress, exactly like it does in response to a message from your vagus nerve. Even though stress triggers your body's immune response, it may lessen your ability to fight actual infections. Chronic stress causes your body to produce cytokines over a long period of time. Cytokines are inflammatory. Chronic inflammation increases your risk of developing autoimmune diseases, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis, and allergies. Okay, so in the previous slide, we learned about connection between brain and immune system. And here we are studying how stress can make you sick. Okay, so just like how when like vagus nerve sends the message to our brains, they produce cytokines. In the same way, brain produces cytokines in response to stress as well. Okay, and even though stress triggers your body's immune system, it may lessen your ability to fight actual infections. Okay, so it actually doesn't prepare your body to fight infections. So I hope it's clear till here. Let's move on. Effects of chronic stress on your immune system. Studies have shown that even short term stress affects your immune system, but the real danger comes from chronic stress that builds up over time. Chronic stress suppresses your immune system. Studies have linked chronic stress to the following diseases. First is asthma. So psychological stressors can trigger asthma attacks. People with asthma who were exposed to harmless substances that they thought would cause an asthma attack were likely to suffer severe reactions only with the fear of having an asthma attack from some harmless substance. Another study showed that people who were under stress showed a stronger allergic response on skin allergy tests than people who weren't. Then another disease which is linked to chronic stress is heart disease. So, people who have had a heart attack are more likely to report stressful events in their lives. For example, stress at work, stress at home, major life changes, financial stress. A study of men with heart disease found that those who experienced three or more major stressful events were twice as likely to die from heart disease. Then, cancer. Researchers are still trying to figure out if chronic stress helps to cause cancer growth. It may allow cancer to spread and grow. Part of the way your body fights cancer is through anoikis, which kills diseased cells and stops them from spreading. Stress hormones suppress this process. So indirectly, it is definitely related. Then moving on to immune system. So immune system is the surveillance system of the body. Okay, it is implicated in infection, allergies, cancer, autoimmune diseases, and and there are other disorders as well. Primary function of immune system is to distinguish between what is self and what is foreign, and then to attack and rid the body of foreign invaders. It does so through natural immunity, which is a generalized defense against pathogens, and a specific immunity, which responds to only one invader. Natural and specific work together such that natural immunity contains infection and wounds rapidly, whereas a specific immunity is a response to a specific invader. Okay, specific immunity is for a specific invader, while natural immunity cures infection and wounds rapidly. Then, assessing immune functioning. Many indicators of immune functioning have been used in research. Some approaches have been assessing functioning of immune system, assessing production of antibodies to latent viruses, assessing levels of immune system products such as pro-inflammatory cytokines, using indirect measures such as how quickly wound heal. Moving on, assessing functioning of cell involves examining activation, proliferation, transformation, and cytotoxicity of cells. One might assess ability of lymphocytes to kill invading cells, lymphocyte cytotoxicity, ability of lymphocytes to reproduce when artificially stimulated by chemical, that is mitogen, or the ability of certain white blood cell to ingest foreign particles, which is phagocytotic activity. Then producing antibodies to a vaccine is also a measure of immune functioning. When people have received a vaccination for a particular disorder, the degree to which the body produces antibodies to the vaccine is a sign of good immune functioning. Researchers can also measure immune related products in the blood, such as pro inflammatory cytokines. Cytokine levels are indicative of inflammatory activity and may increase in response to stress. Wounds heal faster when the immune system is functioning vigorously. Psychological distress impairs the inflammatory response that initiates wound repair. Okay, psychological distress impairs inflammatory response that initiates wound repair. Let's now move on to stress and immune functioning. Many common stressors can adversely affect the immune system. Two basic principles are important for understanding the relation of stress and immunity. The first is that different kinds of stressors require different kinds of defenses, and so a particular immune response may be favored over another in response to certain stressors. For example, short term stressors raise the risk of injury, and so immune system changes in wound repair are very likely in response to short term stress. A second important principle is that a maximally efficient immune response to any situation entails cost, and so some aspects of immunity may be adaptively suppressed as others are actively engaged. Human beings evolved so that in response to sudden stress, changes in the immune system could take place quickly, leading to wound repair and infection prevention. Thus, short term stressors elicit immune responses that anticipate risk of injury and possible entry of infectious agents into the bloodstream. Specific immunity is slow to develop, so a specific immunity would be of little help, little if any help in combating short-term stressors. Thus, immediate short-term stressors produce a pattern of immune responses involving upregulation of natural immunity accompanied by downregulation of a specific immunity. Chronic low-level inflammation, which can occur in response to chronically stressful conditions, contributes to a broad range of disorders, including heart disease and declines in cognitive performance. The body's stress systems appear to partially regulate these effects. Moving on, stress engages sympathetic nervous system and the HPA axis, both of which influence immune functioning. Don't worry, we are going to understand this in detail, HPA axis and sympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nerve activation in response to stress has immediate effects of increasing immune activity, especially natural killer cell activity. Stress-related changes in hypothalamic adrenocortical functioning have immunosuppressive effects. That is, activation of the HPA axis, as happens when people are under stress, leads to the release of glucocorticoids such as cortisol. Cortisol reduces the number of white blood cells, affects the functioning of lymphocytes, and reduces the release of cytokines, which can reduce the ability of these substances to signal and communicate with other aspects of the immune system. So now we will understand this part in detail. The stress response is also known as fight or flight response, and it is a physiological, psychological reaction that occurs in body when it perceives a threat or a stressful situation. It is an automatic response and it prepares the body to either confront the threat or escape from it. When a person encounters a stressful or threatening situation, various physiological changes occur as part of the stress response. So first is the perception of a stressor. So brain perceives a stressor, which can be anything that is perceived as threat. Okay. Then it activates sympathetic nervous system. So brain basically triggers release of a stress hormone, primarily adrenaline, also known as epinephrine, from the adrenal glands, and this hormone activates sympathetic nervous system. Then physical changes happen. When sympathetic nervous system gets activated, some physical changes take place. So let's see. We'll see that later, which physical changes occurs. Then activation of hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Okay, now, so HPA stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So after sympathetic nervous system gets activated, some physical changes takes place in the body, and now HPA axis gets activated. In addition to adrenaline, hypothalamus in the brain triggers the release of another stress hormone called cortisol, which helps regulate blood sugar levels, suppress immune system temporarily, and affects metabolism. ACTH, it stands for adrenocorticotropic hormone. It is a hormone produced by pituitary gland. Thus, simply it's hormone made by a small part of the brain whose job is to tell another part of your body to make a hormone called cortisol. When your body experiences a stress or needs more energy, brain sends signal to pituitary gland to release ACTH. Then ACTH then travel to the adrenal gland and tell them to make cortisol. Thus, ACTH is a messenger that tells our body to produce cortisol. Okay, so let's understand this again. So basically, when HPA axis gets activated, the in addition to adrenaline, the hypothalamus in the brain, that part triggers the release of another stress hormone known as cortisol. And cortisol, what is the function of cortisol? It helps in regulating blood sugar level, and it suppresses immune system temporarily, and it affects metabolism. ACTH stands for adrenocorticotropic hormone, and it is produced by pituitary gland. When your body experiences stress or needs more energy, brain sends a signal to pituitary gland, and pituitary gland release ACTH, and ACTH travel to adrenal gland and tell them to make cortisol. So ACTH is basically a messenger that tells our body to produce cortisol. Okay. So look at this diagram. So the human perceives stress, uh, some physical changes take place, then brain sends signals to pituitary gland, then pituitary gland, uh, what does pituitary gland do? Pituitary gland release ACTH, then ACTH acts on adrenal gland to make cortisol. Okay, so I hope it's clear till here. Now let's move on. What will happen? Suppression of non-essential functions. The stress response prioritizes resources and energy for immediate survival. As a result, non-essential bodily functions such as digestion and reproductivity system activity are temporarily suppressed. Okay, some essential bodily functions gets suppressed for a while because stress response basically prioritizes what our body needs at that very moment. Okay, then let's move on. HPA axis. So let's again understand. So hypothalamus triggers the release of CRH, which is corticotrophin releasing hormone, which activates pituitary gland. Okay, wait a minute. So yes, hypothalamus will trigger the release of CRH. CRH is corticotropic releasing hormone, which will act on pituitary gland. Okay, hypothalamus triggers CRH, release of CRH, then CRH will act on pituitary gland, then pituitary gland will release ACTH, okay, which is carried by the blood to the adrenal gland, okay, and adrenal gland will release stress hormone called cortisol, adrenaline, and non-adrenaline, so that the body can deal with the stressor. Okay, so I hope it's clear till here. Now we will move on. I hope HPA axis is clear to you. So let's understand this again. So the brain will analyze the stressor, predict the stressor, and then hypothalamus will act on the CRF. Hypothalamus will basically activate the release of CRF. CRF is corticotropin releasing hormone. So CRF will act on pituitary. Pituitary will release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and ACTH will act on adrenal glands, and which will uh, basically release cortisol, stress hormone, um, cortisol. Okay, so I hope it's clear. Then let's move on. Then psychological changes, along with physical changes, the stress response also affects psychological and emotional aspects. Attention and focus increases to assess the threat and formulate a response. Emotions such as fear, anxiety, and aggression may be experienced. Cognitive changes such as thinking and decision making may become more focused. Then, resolution of a stress response. Once the perceived threat or stressor is no longer present, stress response begins to subside. Okay. So I hope this whole process is clear to you. So now let's look at this diagram. So nervous system is basically divided into two parts, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system has two main parts, brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is divided into two parts, somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. So somatic is basically about voluntary movement of skeletal muscles, and autonomic is again divided into two parts, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system, and these both are involved in involuntary movement of smooth muscles and glands of organs. Okay, so I hope the basic structure of nervous system is also clear to you. Basically, nervous system is divided into two parts: central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system has two parts: brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is divided again into two parts: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Somatic indulges in voluntary movement of skeletal muscle. Autonomic is again divided into two parts: sympathetic and parasympathetic, and these two help in involuntary movement of smooth muscles and glands of organs. So I hope it's clear till here. So let's move on. So what happens when sympathetic nervous system? So basically, sympathetic nervous system, when it is activated, at that time pupils pupil, which is in the eye, which is a part of eye. So it dilates. Okay, sympathetic nervous system dilates pupil. It increases heartbeat. It dilates bronchial tubules. It stimulates secretion of sweat. Then liver. In liver, it increases rate of converting glycogen to glucose. Digestive system activity decreases. Adrenal glands get stimulated to produce adrenaline and non-adrenaline. Then it relaxes bladder. When parasympathetic nervous system is activated, it helps people constrict. It slows heartbeat. It constricts bronchial tubules. It stimulates secretion and also bile release. Then it stimulates activity of digestive system, and with regards to in regards with urinary system, it increases urinary output. So I hope this is also clear. And autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is a division of peripheral nervous system. PNS is like a communication network that connects brain and spinal cord to rest of the body and consists of nerves and ganglia or ganglion, that is cluster of nerves. And it controls involuntary bodily functions. It maintains homeostasis and regulate internal process. It operates automatically without conscious control and is responsible for regulating various physiological functions throughout the body. ANS is divided in two branches: sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So activation. So when is sympathetic nervous system gets activated? During times of stress or danger. Parasympathetic nervous system activates during times of relaxation, rest, and digestion. With regards to response, sympathetic nervous system, what does it do? It fight or flight response. Then it prepares body for intense physical activity. When parasympathetic nervous system is activated, it basically helps the person to rest and digest response is stimulated. Then it basically reserves our energy, conservation of energy is there. Then let's move on. Heart rate increases when sympathetic nervous system is activated. It decreases when parasympathetic nervous system is activated. Pupil dilates in SNS, sympathetic nervous system. In PNS, it contracts. It constricts, and for respiratory system, increases heart rate and depth of breathing when SNS is activated, while in PNS, it slows down breathing. Then digestive system, SNS slows down digestion, then PNS promotes digestion. Then coming on to blood vessels, so SNS constricts blood vessels while PNS dilates blood vessels. Then coming on to salivation, SNS decreases salivation while PNS increases salivation. So I hope it's clear till here. Then moving on, Sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system work in opposition to each other to maintain body's balance called homeostasis. In other terms, homeostasis is the body's ability to maintain a stable and balanced internal environment despite external changes. Sympathetic nervous system prepares body for actions in times of stress or danger, while parasympathetic nervous system helps body relax, rest, carry out normal bodily functions. Daily life functions of homeostasis, body temperature regulation by shivering or sweating, blood glucose regulation, that is blood sugar after and before food, blood pressure regulation, it maintains that. Moving on, active immunity. Now we are understanding the immunity. So active immunity is the immunity induced in entities by exposure to antigens. It is mediated by two well-defined mechanisms, cell-mediated immunity and humoral immunity. Both immune pathways differ in their targets, components, and methods of destroying pathogens. Okay, then let's understand the difference between cell-mediated immunity and humoral immunity. So cell-mediated immunity, it is mediated by T cells. Then humoral immunity is mediated by B cells. So there is no formation of antibodies in cell-mediated immunity, while there is formation of antibodies in humoral immunity. In cell-mediated immunity, receptors are made to identify antigens, while in humoral immunity, antibodies are made to identify antigens. In cell-mediated immunity, T cell receptors bind to T cell and T cells stick to antigens. In humoral immunity, antibodies produced by B cells stick to the antigen. In cell-mediated immunity protects us against viruses, fungi, and other cellular bacterial pathogens, while humoral immunity protects us against extracellular viruses and bacteria. Cell-mediated immunity can eliminate tumor cells and thus protects against cancer, and humoral immunity cannot eliminate tumor cells. Cell-mediated immunity. In this, both CD4 plus and CD8 plus cells participate in cell-mediated immunity. These CD4 plus and CD8 plus is nothing but the type of T cells, okay? And in humoral immunity, only TH cells participate in humoral immunity. Then cell-mediated immunity mediates hypersensitivity type 4. Humoral immunity mediates hypersensitivity 1, 2, 3. Cell-mediated immunity shows a delayed response. Humoral immunity is quick in response. Then humoral immunity, let's understand this once more. Humoral immunity is mediated by antibodies. Okay, and it shows a quick response against pathogens. It is the major defense mechanism against extracellular microbes trying to invade the host system. Antibodies produced by B cells bind to the antigens and neutralize the microbes. Cell-mediated immunity is facilitated by T helper and cytotoxic T cells. Cytokines secreted by T helper cells activate phagocytic cells, while phagocytose the pathogens, which phagocytose the pathogens and kill them. What is the similarity between cell-mediated and humoral immunity? Both are active immunities, both have a lag period, both are active against a wide variety of pathogens, both possess immunological memories, both systems are not effective in immune deficient individuals. So that is it for today's video. I hope everything is clear to you, because this concept is really important to understand. So now you know about immunity, so about active immunity, and then types of immunity, which is cell-mediated and humoral. So both humoral and cell-mediated immunity, we read about similarities and differences both. Then obviously we've understood stress response in detail. I hope HPA is clear to you. Then we studied about effects of chronic stress on immune system and how stress can make you sick, connection between brain and immune system, and basically what psychoneuroimmunology is. So I hope everything is clear to you. If you have any doubt, please do ask in the comment section. And that is it for today's video. And yes, I will see you all in the next video.